Miss me?
So last year, as part of my Christmas horror movie review series, I decided to talk about perhaps the most powerful and unstoppable slasher in the history of cinema, Jack Frost. A serial killer turned snowman as a result of some scientific chemical and following his quest for revenge against those who arrested him. There were laughs, there were kills, there was some snowman sexual assault along the way, but eventually it was discovered that the main character's son, Ryan, yeah, I have to share the same name with this weirdo ginger menace, but Ryan decided to add antifreeze into his father's oatmeal to keep him warm. Sure, kid, we buy that story for a minute. Before his dad had a chance to ingest this antifreeze, they toss some of it onto Jack and discover that antifreeze is his weakness. So they knock him into a pool of it, which liquidates him, and they bury all the liquid deep underground, never to be unearthed again. Until now. That's right, they made a fucking sequel to Jack Frost called Jack Frost 2: Revenge of the Mutant Killer Snowman. And this time it takes place in the Bahamas. Which begs the question, how can a snowman exist in the Bahamas? Well, remember, Jack Frost is more powerful than you can possibly imagine in your feeble human mind, and in this movie, he's stronger than he ever was before. He becomes an entity far beyond human understanding, a frozen menace with a singular goal to wreak as much havoc as possible and become your holly jolly nightmare of death and devastation. Hold on to your snowballs because it will be a cold day in hell before you can avoid death at the mittens of this fucked up Frosty the Snowman. The sequel was released in the year 2000, which is 3 years after the original and 2 after the Michael Keaton version. But in the continuity of this franchise, it has been 1 year since the first movie. And although it's not overt, this does take place in December around Christmas time, so there's some Christmas decorations, and yeah, that counts enough as a Christmas movie for me. The main character of the first movie returns, along with a few other characters too. He's talking with his therapist about the horrendous PTSD he experienced having to tangle with a murdering snowman last year. But not only does the therapist think that he's full of shit, but he also lets his secretary and everybody else in the office listen in, abandoning that confidentiality rule just so that they can all laugh and mock the guy.
Mutant killer snowman.
This guy's an asshole, and he never gets a chance to die. Meanwhile, the remains of Jack are dug up by some unknown characters, and they're taken to a laboratory to be studied. None of what they're doing is ever actually explained, other than a quick offhand line from Jack later on.
Well, let me explain to you the inherent dangers of unregulated genetic experimentation, you see?
But when a janitor accidentally spills a cup into the tank containing Jack, he reforms himself into ice, kills the janitor, and then escapes down the drain. But don't worry, we'll get into all of his powers and abilities soon. So Sam and his wife take a trip to the Bahamas for a wedding of Joe and Marla, who are also featured in the first movie, but they leave their son Ryan behind, and he doesn't even get any screen time in this version. They're probably leaving him behind so he doesn't try to poison them again. But anyway, once they get to the Bahamas, we are introduced to the other characters in the movie, like Colonel Hickering, who runs the place and basically has the same role as the mayor from Jaws, where he's aware that murders are happening, but he doesn't want to make it public because that'll ruin his business. We got Bobby the bartender.
Oh, that's Bobby's Island Daiquiri.
And we have a character named Captain Fun, whose only job is to make everybody have fun all the time, even when they don't want to. I like to call this toxic positivity.
So this is your plan to lure the killer out into the open?
Isn't it the tops?
Now, even though Jack Frost can shapeshift and turn himself into water, ice, and snow at his will, there's one thing he needs to complete the snowman aesthetic, and that's a carrot nose. Luckily, 2 guys that are stranded in the ocean happen to have one on their raft, so Jack murders them and takes the carrot. And then we have the carrot being carried around by water and speaking for a while.
There's a party and I'm not invited. Someone's gonna pay.
There's a lot of stuff like this going on, actually. While the novelty of the first movie was the killer snowman, the sequel dials that back heavily for a bit of an attempt at more creative kills. Jack Frost in his actual snowman form only appears a few times in the film, so it can feel a little disappointing. But if I were to assume, whatever little budget they had was probably spent on the other special effects and puppets that we see later on, so the snowman costume only shows up sporadically. First set of kills are 3 girls that are hanging out on the beach, and I actually recognize one of the actresses. Her name is Shonda Farr. She plays the robot girlfriend of Warren on Buffy the Vampire Slayer in Season 5. Yeah, I know that's extremely niche, but I was still surprised to recognize somebody in this movie. Now, I didn't know this until I looked at the cast list, but the guy that was on the raft with the carrot is actually played by the actor Doug Jones, who is famous for playing a lot of different monsters over the years, especially showing up in a lot of Guillermo del Toro films, and he was also in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Anyway, after missing with some of his icicle projectiles, Jack just decides to turn himself into an anvil and crush her. Classic. The second girl does get the icicle treatment, and the third girl, well, Jack decides he doesn't want to use any of his snowman powers, and instead, he just uses a pair of tongs to rip her eyes out, because why not? While investigating the murder, Sam comes across Agent Manners. The joke of this being that this was a character from the first movie as well, but now is being played by a different actor, and it's addressed in the movie that he's had failed facial reconstruction surgery. But they both agree that Jack is still alive and here on the island somewhere. Jack's next victim is a model that is doing a photo shoot, and although it doesn't show nudity here, I still don't know how much I can show of this scene on YouTube, but here's the gist. Jack turns himself into ice cubes, and it seems like each individual ice cube contains his consciousness and personality because they all talk to each other as individuals. But then we get a point of view shot of Jack as an ice cube as the model grabs the cube and rubs it on her nipples.
I must have been a good boy this year.
So since the ice cube itself is Jack, I do believe that this would count as snowman sexual assault, so there is consistency film to film. But after the model decides to chew on and swallow one of the Jack ice cubes, Jack just causes her to explode from the inside. How does he do this from a singular ice cube? Does it fuse with all of the water in her body? I have no idea, but he does it. And that's why we need to talk about Jack Frost's power level here, because he is basically an Omega level threat. He's made of snow, so you can't harm him with normal weapons. If you try to hit him with a blunt or sharp object, it'll go right through him. Bullets will go right through him. He doesn't take any damage from conventional weapons. And then he can turn himself into water or any variety of water, including ice and snow and yada yada. He can be ingested and then murder you from the inside. He can shapeshift into solid, deadly objects like the anvil, being able to shoot projectile icicles out of his body. In this movie, he even has more advanced powers, like obviously retaining his snowman form even in the high temperatures of the Bahamas, and also being able to manipulate the temperatures around him into freezing cold temperatures. He can freeze an entire pool just by touching it. But he also freezes the entire bar area, which freezes people in their place. So he just has full-on ice powers with seemingly no limit to them. He has height and strength, showcased when this kid sticks his tongue onto a frozen pole and then Jack just rips his tongue off with ease. And besides icicles, he can now throw deadly snowballs out of his body as well. He can instantly fuse himself with the snow on the ground and travel through it.
Oh, gotta go! Whee!
And his one weakness from the first movie, antifreeze, he is now immune to.
It isn't working. Why isn't it working? Because I'm all new and improved.
But that's not even all of it. Because in this movie, Jack is able to create offspring in the form of tiny mutant snowball monsters that serve as the main threat for the second act of this movie. And they're kind of like this movie's version of the Gremlins, although because of the way they look, they remind me more of the Critters. In reviewing the first movie, I said Jack is a lot like Majin Buu in the way that he can manipulate his body, regenerate, go inside someone else's body, and is virtually indestructible. But now in this movie, he's also like Cell in the way that he can create weird little offspring. So at this point, I just have to assume the creators of these movies are actually Dragon Ball Z fans. But I like the little snowball creatures. I think they're pretty cute. I assume a lot of the effects budget went into them, and that's the reason why we don't see Jack Frost as his snowman self too often, but also the effects on the snowball creatures are pretty lackluster. They can't do much except open their mouths and talk a little bit. Also, there is a bizarre usage of CGI for them that fails miserably on every level. I guess just because it was the year 2000, they felt like they had to use CGI since it existed now, but holy shit is it bad. But despite all of that, the idea of a bunch of little snowball monsters attacking and eating characters is a lot of fun, and I'm totally here for it. After they rampage a bit on the human characters, they finally figure out what Jack's new weakness is, and are you ready for this? The unstoppable snowman creature that cannot be subdued by any weapon known to man, has more powers than you could possibly comprehend, is immune to its previous weakness, now has a new weakness. It's not heat, it's not a snowblower, it's bananas.
I am a banana!
Literally, like, just a fucking banana. The reason being is when Jack and Sam fell into the antifreeze together at the end of the first movie, Sam was bleeding, and so Sam's DNA merged with Jack Frost. Sam is allergic to bananas, and so now, so is Jack. It makes perfect sense. So they gather all the bananas they can and mix it into liquid to shoot out of squirt guns to kill all the snowball monsters. And what happens next is probably the most tragic moment in all of cinema. Jack finds his wounded and dying snowball offspring and holds it in his arms as it slowly passes away. A somber moment of pain, love, and loss, showing that even an abominable, murdering snowman can still shed a tear for those that he loves. And finally, in the last 5 minutes of the movie, Jack appears as the full snowman form, going on a vengeful murder spree.
I rode into town and I'm looking for the bitch who killed my family!
Showcasing yet another ability of forming himself into an icebox and then sending icicles through it, trapping Sam's wife. Sadly, she doesn't die because Sam shows up in the nick of time with a banana tied to an arrow. Oh yeah, there was an archery scene earlier in the movie, so this was foreshadowed, I guess. The banana arrow hits its target and explodes Jack into what looks like a giant pool of shaving cream, and also somehow Sam's wife is still alive from being inside of him. At least until maybe Sam walks her out into the ocean, because I don't know where he's going, and I don't know where he's planning on taking her. There's no boat there. Are they going to swim home? Yeah, whatever. Just walk her into the ocean. During the credits, we get to see some Japanese fishermen that are purposely dubbed over in the most terrible cliche way possible.
Did you feel that?
Yes, I did. But what was it?
I do not know.
And although it's off-screen, they supposedly see a giant snowman rise up from the ocean like a kaiju, dropping its carrot on them and killing them, leaving us on a cliffhanger. According to some behind-the-scenes info, the filmmakers planned on doing a kaiju Jack Frost movie for the third installment, but they never got any funding for it. I can't imagine why. So yes, sadly, this was the last Jack Frost movie, and it ended up being a very short-lived franchise. But you know what? As ridiculous as these movies are, Jack is a pretty terrifying villain, all things considered. I think they should reboot this series, or if they wanted to hit that current trend, they should make a legacy sequel. Have the doofy ginger kid Ryan from the first movie all grown up, hunting down Jack with a sword wrapped in banana skins or something. Listen, I'm just saying there's potential here. If you can have 9 evil Bong movies, then there's no reason we can't get a third Jack Frost movie and give us a solid trilogy or some kind of reboot. I mean, Jack Frost is more durable than Jason. He has the quips of Chucky and Freddy. He's more powerful than Pennywise. And eventually we will reach a second ice age on the planet where the only survivors could possibly be polar bears, cockroaches, and Jack Frost. Anyways, guys, if you somehow, in some way, have actually managed to watch Jack Frost 2 in your life, and I'm really sorry if you did, because it's the kind of movie that might only be 90 minutes long, but it feels like 3 hours when you're watching it. And I don't mean that in a good way. But if you have seen it, let me know what you think down below. And if you want to see it, it's on Tubi for free right now. Anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Leave all your thoughts, comments, and opinions down below. I will have 2 more Christmas horror movie reviews for you as the month goes on. Leave a like and comment. Also, if you want to support the channel on a deeper level, I have Patreon channel memberships. Even $1 a month would mean a lot to me, and it would go a long way. I'd appreciate it if you'd consider it. But other than that, guys, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll talk to you next time.
I'm out of here. Ah!